Economy. We're also streaming this live on Facebook, so just look for the platform Nigeria. Our next speaker is the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mrs. kemiAdeosun. She'll be speaking on the Nigerian economy and taking a few questions thereafter. You're very welcome, ma'am. Let us rise, please, as we welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mrs. kemiAdeosun.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, and good morning, or good afternoon. I want to first thank Pastor for the invitation to speak and for convening this on a very important and symbolic day. I think the focus on the economy is exactly where the church should be, so I want to thank you for this initiative. God bless you, sir. And I want to thank all of you for coming out in the rain. It shows that you have an interest and a passion for the Nigerian economy. I'm going to take you through some slides. Can I have my slides? And speak to the road to recovery, because we've been through... Oh, where is Governor Peter Obi? Has run away. They should go and bring him for me. I need to talk to him about a few of those. Go and bring him. I don't want to join issues with Governor Obi. He's an excellent governor and a patriotic Nigerian, but a few of those things he was reading are not quite accurate. Thank you. Don't run, sir. Thank you very much for retrieving Pastor Obi for me, Governor Obi. So thank you very much. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Nigerian economy and answer the questions that I know you've all been answering, but I won't join issues with Governor Obi, but every now and then I may stray, a bullet may hit him. But so it's all about building a productive economy, and it's really the road to recovery. But in order for us to understand where we're going, there are a few things I've got to be able to answer today. And that's about the past, the present, and the future. What happened? How did we get here? What happened? Everybody's asking the question. And we need to understand it, because to the extent that we understand it, we'll be able to build a future that will make sure we don't make those mistakes again. And what's happening at present? What is government doing? How are you solving these problems? I'll speak to that. And then what will happen as a result? Where is this future diversified economy? What does it look like? What does it mean for me and you? I'll also speak to that. So again, these are the questions you're asking. What happened? These missed opportunities that Governor Obi spoke about, indeed all the speakers and every economist, we're all pretty much, there's a consensus that Nigeria missed a lot of opportunities. And we need to understand why. And what are we doing? We're laying the groundwork for a more resilient economy and what's going to happen in the future. We're going to build an economy that really doesn't care what the oil price is. And it's extremely important. We cannot afford to behave like an oil economy. And I'll explain why. There are 180 million of us. We have 2 million barrels of oil a day. The Kuwaitis have 3.9 million people and 3 million barrels of oil a day. So we can't afford to behave like an oil economy. And what is an oil economy? An oil economy simply pumps the oil up, and then they use the money, the dollars, to buy everything they need. That's the economic model that Nigeria had largely been following. We export crude oil. What is crude oil? Crude is unrefined oil. We don't even refine. And then we buy everything. In fact, we buy the same crude oil back. They refine it and sell it back to us. When I talk to people that are not as young and as exposed as you, I say it's like exporting cassava and importing gari. That's what we've been doing. We don't add value. We don't get any of the byproducts. They just give us the dollars and then we import everything. And what does that do? It means that Nigeria has become a very unproductive economy. The states come, I was a commissioner, every month, all of us, 36, fly up to Abuja and we share. That's the constitution. But that was not the intention of the Nigerian dream. The Nigerian dream was 36 states all producing, all productive. Now, what did oil do for us? It made us extremely lazy. it made so many businesses unprofitable. And in particular, because of the way we spent our oil proceeds. And I shall speak to that as we go on. Because the truth is, what we spent money on were the wrong things. And that's the result we now have. There's always a lag. There's always a delay between action and effect. We are now suffering the effects of what was done 2, 3, and 4 years ago. And I'll show you why. Let's go to the next slide. Please. Next slide. Good. On the right, you'll see the average oil price before 2008 was $51. And we were doing okay. Not brilliantly, but we were doing okay. We were pretty stable. We weren't growing brilliantly, but we were steady. And then the oil price suddenly shot up, which is the period you see. Went as high as $120 a barrel. What did we do with that extra money? Maybe I should ask, what could we have done with that extra money? Well, if we had just fixed power, nothing else, just power, wouldn't be in recession today. If we had just fixed roads, wouldn't be in recession today. If we had just built a rail system, won't be in recession today. But what did government spend money on during that period? We weren't in government, by the way, but Governor Obi may know some of the people who were there. 90%, sorry sir, 90% of government expenditure was on what we call recurrent. What is recurrent? Salaries, travel, training, welfare. Welfare, by the way, is food. Welfare. That's what we were spending money on. Only 10% went on capital. Only 10% of government spending was on capital. Now, what is capital? Roads, rail, power, housing, building educational institutions. Only 10% of government expenditure was capital. So that's, I think I should pause as His Excellency arrives. No? I should keep going. Okay. So only 10% of what we were spending was productive. Effectively, we were just wasting money. And I have many statistics that I can use. We were, in 2015, our travel bill was 64 billion naira. Yes. But the amount spent on roads was 19 billion. For the whole country, the whole federal government. Now, I was a state commissioner. In 1 year in Ogun State, we spent more than 20 billion on roads, just in our state. How can the whole federation spend 19 billion and we expect to grow? So, a lot of money was wasted. What else happened to that extra money? Please keep that slide, don't show me, slow the slide, it's very important. What else happened to that extra money? A lot of it was stolen. When the central bank governor at the time said money is going missing, he was harassed. When the person who's supposed to collect your money, the banker, tells you that, please, your credits are not entering your bank account, you should take notice. We didn't, because things were still looked okay. Money was going missing. People were selling oil, diverting the proceeds. So when we talk about who's to blame, it's not about politics, but truth is, if we're to be very honest, it's all of us. Everybody. That's the truth. When it comes to blame, we should always have a mirror. It's all of us. Those of us who heard that money was going missing and did nothing, those who heard money was going missing and didn't believe it, we're all to blame. And the consequences are what we are now dealing with. Now we're running after money, and it's so interesting because now we're trying to recover money and people are shouting at the government, why are you not recovering? Why didn't you talk when they were stealing? If prevention is better than cure, now we're looking for money everywhere. But people were stealing the money, they carted it away. When we started, it's interesting the question that was asked about money being found. When we started the whistleblower policy, there was so much debate. People said, no, why should you pay somebody 5%? Our argument was, what about the person who stole 100%? Why aren't you worried about the person who took 100%? Why are you fixated with the person who's getting 5% for helping you to bring it back? 5% is just the cost of getting it back. But that's the money that should have been used for our roads. That's the money that should have been used for our rail. Yes, Governor Obi mentioned the fact that money was borrowed. We didn't do that loan, but we inherited it, and government is a continuum for the airports that are being fixed now. The runway that was closed in Abuja, we paid Julius Berger up front. We called them, we said, this is your money. Make sure the airport is open on the day it's meant to open. Did it not open? So if you spend money on the right things, you get the right results. I thought it was interesting, just an interesting analogy. We find how much in somebody's flat. Convert it into Naira, it's about 24 billion? 24 billion? It was only 8 billion was needed for that runway. Wouldn't have had to have closed the airport. So we need to be very, very honest with ourselves so that we don't all think it was everybody else, not us. We all sat here, we all watched that excess. There's some countries that just sold their oil forward, like the Mexicans. They sold their oil forward, they said, give us $68 a barrel, we don't care whether it goes to 150, 100, we just want stability. There's some countries where they only spend a fixed percentage of their oil revenues. But we lived on oil, and it made us feel good. And unfortunately, we didn't spend those boom years, we didn't spend the money on the right things. And that's why we are now in a position, as Governor Obi has acknowledged, that we do have to borrow. Why? Because if we have to wait for the oil price to recover, we'll be in recession for a very long time. So the only option we have is borrow, but use the money for capital projects. If you take a Nigerian and another entrepreneur, let's assume they both bake cookies. The one in Nigeria has certain things that make him or her uncompetitive. Number one, power. Number two, okay, after baking the cookies, how do you move them? Let's even say the person is in Onitsha. Before they bring their cookies from Onitsha to Lagos, the cost of transport has made them unprofitable. And it's cheaper to then import from China the same cookies. So that's what's been happening. But we're trying to change that. And that's why you see the massive expenditure on capital projects. Trying to do more with much less money. Because when we do that, businesses can thrive. When we put the rail system in place and you can move from maybe Ibadan to Lagos in 40 minutes instead of 6 hours, businesses can thrive. And that's where jobs are created, and that's how economies grow. And those jobs are not in oil. Those jobs are outside oil. Those are resilient jobs that will bring long-term growth to our economy. So that's the story. That's really the story of what happened. We had a lot of money, and we didn't use it well. We squandered it. What wasn't stolen was wasted. And now we're living with the consequence. At that same time, we were borrowing. The same time that oil prices were as high as 120, Nigeria was borrowing. Borrowing to pay salaries. Now we're borrowing to do railway, and people are saying, don't borrow. I don't get it. We have to be serious. We have no choice. When they were borrowing to pay salaries is when we should have come out and said, why are you borrowing? Oil is 120. What are you borrowing for? And yet you're not doing capital projects. So what are you borrowing for? Those are the questions, those are the debates we should have had, but we didn't have them. But the past is gone, but we need to move forward. So how is this government trying to do things differently? Capital expenditure now is our focus. Everything we're doing is to create headroom for capital expenditure that will bring in quality infrastructure that will get this economy moving. There's pretty much no part of this federation that doesn't have the potential to be productive. Now we're talking about Ebonyi rice. Who knew Ebonyi rice then? Now we're eating local rice. We're talking about Kebi rice instead of buying Thailand rice. That's creating jobs for Nigerians. And we must continue along those lines. We must get our refineries working so that we don't import petroleum, and we cannot be importing food. We simply can't afford to be importing food. 180 million people. With the kind of unemployment we have no business importing food. And we have huge, huge amounts of fertile land. We can't import food. So let me move on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so what are we doing? How are we trying to do things differently? One of the things that we're trying to do is to improve our revenues so that we're not so dependent on oil. Oil is only 10% of our economy, but was representing about 60% of government revenues. That's a mismatch. What about the rest of the economy? Why is it contributing so little to government revenue? Our tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria is 6%. We have one of the lowest in the world. Ghana is at 15.9% tax to GDP. South Africa's at 24%. Most advanced countries are around 30 to 32% tax to GDP. We're at 6%. I ran some analysis. I asked the Federal Inland Revenue Service to give me details of the number of Nigerians paying taxes of 20 million naira or above. Anybody want to guess the number? 214 for the whole country out of 180 million people. And yet we have billionaires, millionaires, trillionaires. How can only 214 people be paying tax of 20 million naira or more? Something's wrong. So we're going to fix that. We have to broaden the tax base. Already, the Federal Inland Revenue Service have registered more than 825,000 companies that have either paid no tax at all or who were just registered and just didn't pay. And they're active, and some of them were doing business with government. So we set a rule. If you come to government for a payment, the first thing we do is check your tax status. That's when we discovered that even some people who came, subsidy, government is owing me, want to pay you now. You've never paid any tax. How can that be? So we're blocking all those loopholes. If you come to government now, we want to see your tax status. There's a legal requirement that on every headed paper you're supposed to list the names of directors. We've not been complying. We've just sent out a circular. If you're processing a payment, if we can't see the names of the directors of the company, don't pay. Because we must know that everybody pays their fair share. It's the way a tax system, a good tax system must work. And for us to drive this country forward, Nigerians have to pay the right taxes. Not tax of going bring a tax clearance certificate of 50,000 naira and you're traveling business class. Those days are over. People have to pay the right taxes. If we want services, if we want power, if we want rail, if we want road, we have to pay for it. So we also are blocking leakages in the tax system and improving compliance. Then we're improving customs revenue. When we came into office, all the scanners, all the container scanners had broken down. Why? They gave the contract to some politicians to do. They didn't maintain the scanners. None are working. Now, that has an impact on two things. It has an impact on customs revenue because for them to see what's inside the container, they have to open it and begin to pull it out and look at the things. It's not done like that anywhere in the world. It adds to the delay in your getting your goods out, and it gives customs officers discretion. What is this? Is it a greenhouse or is it they decide? No, it shouldn't be like that. We're one of the few countries that doesn't have what is called the single window. Single window is when you ship a good from one country, you key in the detail and the HS codes, and automatically it will assess how much customs duty should be paid without even seeing what's in the container. So we're doing that. We're bringing those and buying new container scanners so that we can get the right customs revenues. Because we actually import a lot of things in this country, and there is a disconnect between how much we import and the customs revenues, which means money is leaking. So we're using technology to block that. Then we're improving tax on luxury items. We believe that the first taxes that should increase are on the people who have the greatest ability to pay. So luxury items, those of you that like champagne and brandy and alcohol and tobacco should be ready to pay a higher rate of tax and customs duty on those items. So we'll be rolling those out shortly. This is church, you don't drink champagne now. So, on the cost side, of course, we must reduce corruption. We are fighting the battle against corruption. We are fighting the battle against leakages. We're stopping the situations where money just went missing. There was no accountability for money. We're working very, very hard to stop that. We're using technology. We're cleaning out a lot of the ghost workers and fraudulent or dead people that are still collecting pensions. Why? Because 40% of government expenditure is on salaries and pensions. 40%. So 40 out of every 100 naira that government spends is on either salary or pension. So you have to control it. You have to control it. We're building the controls. We're using biometric. We're using scanners. We're using every form of technology to keep that wage bill down. Why? Wage bill, when I first became minister, was 165 billion naira every month. 165 billion. It's a huge, huge amount, so you have to control it. Now we're bringing it down every month. We're taking people off the payroll. Some of them have been dead for years. Some people collecting 3-4 salaries. I'm very optimistic that EFCC will shortly secure our first conviction against one of the ghost workers, those people collecting multiple salaries, because I've insisted that they must be prosecuted. No matter how short the sentence is, it's important to send the message that as far as we're concerned, collecting 2 or 3 salaries, collecting salary on behalf of your mother that died and continuing to collect her pension is fraud. And we must send that message very, very strongly. Then we're reducing our overheads. Governor Obi spoke a lot about wastage. It's one of my fixations as a minister. We cannot afford, we don't have money to waste. So we sent round circulars. You cannot travel in a private jet. You cannot travel first class. You cannot spend more than, I think it's 1,500 naira for lunch. When I came in, some meetings would have, when you calculate how many people were at the meeting and how much they spent on food, it's like 15,000 naira a head. I said, are they there for the food or are they there for the meeting? No, you can't do this. It's 1,500 naira. Whatever that covers, that should be enough. Then we made a lot of new circulars. No face cap, T-shirts. Then these programs where the first page is the president, second page is the vice president, third page is... We don't need all that. So we've sent circulars to stop all that. So there's a lot of efficiency being brought into government. Then we also have worked on our debt profile. Of course, I explained that our debts had increased quite significantly by the time we came into office. And government is the biggest borrower. So once government borrows at 16, it creates the baseline, and private sector then finds itself borrowing at 23, 24. So what we're trying to do is we have to borrow, but we're trying to borrow as cheaply as possible. So we're approaching the concessional lenders. We're borrowing offshore where possible to leave room for the private sector so that they too can come in and borrow to fund their business. In the short term, we must borrow because we have no choice. If we want to invest in our infrastructure, we've got to borrow. We don't have the money and we cannot afford to wait for the oil price to recover because the outlook is that it's going to stay between 50 and 51 for at least the next 4 years. We're not going back to the days of 120 anymore, so we just have to live with the current reality. However, as we improve our revenues, we have a sinking fund set up now to begin to retire debt so that we begin to pay down debt. As things improve, we begin to pay down debt. Governor Obi mentioned the issue of saving, and I'm pleased to tell you, sir, that last month, for the first time, we paid money into the excess crude account. $87 million was paid into the excess crude account. So even though things are difficult, we are saving. And the Sovereign Wealth Authority, as you know, sir, since we've come in, we've given them an extra $500 million, and we're still planning to do more. So we've learnt the lessons of the past, and we are working towards a more resilient future for everybody. As I've said, we've increased our allocation to capital within the budget to 30%, up from 10% where we inherited it. And that's why you're seeing work going on. You're seeing projects getting done. And we will continue with that. Yes, there is a lag. People are asking, when is it going to affect me? It affects you when the projects are finished. It affects you when business is. And it's started to happen now. And I'm very happy to say that when I leave here, and that's why I was rushing a little, I'm going to meet a group of investors who've come in from America, long-term investors who are now looking at Nigeria and saying, yes, it's time to come. On Thursday, we have a group of Japanese investors. We're not talking about people that are bringing, sachets of tea for us to come and sell. No, we're talking about people that want to set up factories. We're talking about people that want to manufacture transformers. We're talking about industrialists. They're coming back into Nigeria because Nigeria is showing that it's serious. Nigeria has understood its problem. We've taken the pain. We've taken the pain. Often the medicine that does you the best is the most bitter medicine. And we have had very bitter medicine in the last 1 year. But now we'll have the long-term benefits in terms of growth and in terms of job. Then in the area of entrepreneurship, we have revived the Development Bank of Nigeria, which is a project that was started under our predecessor. It had stalled, we got it going. That bank is going to have $1.3 billion of capital that will be lent to microfinances and banks specifically to be on lent to small and medium-sized businesses. Because actually our economy is 50% are SMEs, and only 10% of them have access to loans. So if you begin to improve their access to capital, you can rapidly grow jobs and grow business. So that's one of the initiatives. The other one is a project called UWIN, which some of you will know. UWIN was a project that gave grants to young entrepreneurs. We've reviewed it and revised it. We're changing it into two things. One is enterprise education, teaching people how to do business. A lot of people will say, I know how to do business. I was born in business. No. If you go anywhere in the world where business thrives, take America, they have magazines on business, books on business, television programs on business. So it's not innate. You have to learn it, you have to work on it. So we're improving entrepreneurial education. How do you write a business plan? How do you work out whether you're making profit or not? Some people are just doing business. They're making losses. They don't even know. So we need to improve our knowledge of business as well as bringing in the funding. And then on the funding front, we've put together a venture fund. So those who come to us, small businesses that need up to 50 million of capital, will be able to approach the UWIN Venture Fund. Then we take a stake in their business. As the business grows, they can either buy us out, or they can list, or they can look for new investors. So that's the plan. And of course, as a venture fund, we will incubate those businesses, or provide them with all the support for them to grow. So we're also looking at providing additional incentives to investors that want to invest in small businesses by giving them tax relief. So encouraging rich people, richer or wealthier people, to invest in growing businesses and allow them some tax relief to do so. Of course, all this is the financial side, but it's being supported by the work that the Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment is doing on ease of doing business, removing some of those bottlenecks that cause 4 or 5 different agencies to come and harass people. We're harmonizing all those things, multiple taxation, to improve our ease of doing business, because that's also a very important factor in growth. So, what do we expect to happen? You can see what happened in 2015, that even though tax was only 10% of our GDP, it was 62% of our revenues. That's what made us vulnerable. So as soon as the oil price fell, we were in trouble. And let me give you an idea that in 2013, I believe it was, the fact, that's the monthly sharing that Governor Obi doesn't like, that sharing, it was 900 billion for 1 month. And this month, which is, in fact, as I've been minister, we sat down 1 month, it was only 300. So you can imagine if your income drops from 900 to 300, there's no way you will not have an impact. Now it's getting back up gradually. I think last month was 460. So there's still a long way to go from where we were. The question we should really ask ourselves is, what projects were done when that money was so high? What happened to that money? That's the billion-dollar question that we're all asking. Which roads were built? Which airports were finished? Which power improved? Nothing. There's nothing to show for that money. But we can't afford to let that happen again. The past is gone, but now everybody's eyes are watching closely, and I think it's a good thing. So the plan is to improve oil and non-oil taxes to get the balance right. So the rest of the economy, agriculture, services, banking, trade, people must pay taxes. There must be more revenue to show for those areas of the... We can't all rely on oil. So we're going to be pushing out quite a few initiatives to improve our revenue. Then on our costs, we'll continue to be efficient, continue to be prudent, continue to make sure that every naira counts. That's one of our mantras in the Ministry of Finance, making every naira count. Every naira, every kobo counts. So improving how we spend money, asking ministries, which we're doing now, all the assets, go and give us the asset registers. Where are Nigerian government assets? That's when we discovered that someone has driven 30 cars away. It's because we don't have controls. How can someone drive away 30 cars? And we didn't know. So now we're asking everybody, all the assets you've bought, account for them. If someone has taken an asset, then he must pay for it. You don't just drive something away. It's never done anywhere in the world. So there's a lot of activity going on to improve things, reducing leakages and optimizing our borrowings. And what do we think will happen? We'll have better economic growth. We're already seeing improvements in agriculture. We're going to see a recovery in manufacturing with the improvements in foreign exchange. That will begin to come back. And the opportunities will be driven from there. There's so many opportunities in Nigeria. If you drive the length and breadth of this country, there is just so much that we could be doing. There's nothing we don't have here. Now we have all the ingredients to do the right thing. And this government is going to support that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to really, can I have the next slide? And that's the final slide. To really give credit to His Excellency President Buhari and His Excellency, who'll be speaking after me, Professor Oshibajo. If ever there was a time that Nigeria has a chance to make it, it's now. Because every time, and I'm not being political because I'm not a politician, unlike His Excellency, but I am just saying it as it is, which is the only thing I know to do. When you deal with leadership, who anytime you ask them at a decision point, what do we do? And their only consideration is, what is the right thing to do? Then you know you're in good hands. Anytime you go to President Buhari, there's only one question: what's the right thing to do? Not what is the expedient thing to do, not what is the political thing to do, not what is the quick, let us just, no, what is the right thing to do? And I think with that, and with the energy and enthusiasm of Nigerians, we can get this country can work. I certainly, from where I'm seeing, I'm always optimistic. And what makes me optimistic is that I've seen that, okay, people are not stealing, okay, we're starting to see money. We send money to a ministry, go and do this, they did it. So this country can work. It's not rocket science. The other countries, as our parents used to say, they don't have two heads. And yet, when we go to other countries, we perform fantastically. So why should we accept failure here? It's not possible. It's not an option. We must refuse to lose. We must be very, very determined. This is our country. And for those who are praying and fasting to get a visa, I don't believe in that, because I was born, bred and buttered there. There's a limit to where you'll go. Now they've even started to say, you people start going. So let's build our country together. And we can do it. We are endowed with everything. Everything. There's some states where if you go there, if you go to Taraba, it's as cold as London. What's their problem? Their road is bad. If they had roads, the dairy, the cows there can produce the milk we're importing. So there's just so much, and I'm sure all of us are from different states. You get to your state, you see the ground is lush, it's green. We have no excuse. And so as the economy grows, there are going to be opportunities everywhere. In services, in agriculture, in trade, we'll be exporting. Now we started exporting again. All the things we had abandoned. We were number one in cocoa before. We stopped cocoa. We stopped palm oil. We're importing. Now we'll go back to basics, rebuild our economy, and be in a position where, whether the oil price is 1 naira or 100 naira, Nigerians will be growing sustainably. And I urge you to really back this government, because we have the right interests, the right policies that will take Nigeria forward. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much.